So Natlan released, we got a free 5-star, and there are more quality of life improvements that I can count. The devs are finally listening to the community after years of begging. The question to ask is the following. Is it now possible to play Genshin Impact without me wanting to tear my skin off? You'd be surprised to know that not really. I think I might come across as too rigid in this video, but to be perfectly real with you, I don't think that Genshin can be forgiven. Although this phrasing does sound very harsh, this doesn't mean that I don't like the game. I've been playing Genshin Impact since release, and although I've had my occasional hiatuses, I always end up coming back to it. It contains an impossibly beautiful world, some very captivating storytelling, and a lot of characters that I've grown very fond of. Ever since my hiatus ended all the way back in 4.3, I've been playing this game every day, and now I get to see the launch of yet another nation. First things first, War-torn country, my ass. Natlan is beautiful, and in my opinion it has some of the most interesting world design of all the nations so far. So far, as you may have noticed, I have quite a few positive things to say about Genshin. So what explains the intro section? If the game was truly shit, I wouldn't be invested in it, and I would have dropped it a long. Not only that, but I also believe that a lot of the hate towards Genshin is very much unjustified. I'm talking of course about the people who haven't bothered trying out the game League of Legends. I haven't tried it, the game sucks, and if you play it, you suck too. Except, of course, you don't. It's not a crime to play it, and you wouldn't do it if it wasn't fun, or at the very least entertaining. At the end of the day, they are both games meant to be played for entertainment, and if you haven't had a reasonable amount of contact with it, odds are that whatever take you have about it is not going to be a true reflection of what the game has to offer. Having said this, as someone who's been playing Genshin for the past 4 years, I am torn between trying to get all my friends to play it as well, and at the same time begging them to stay as far away from it as they can. And I know for a fact that I'm not the only one of this contradictory feeling. In fact, I'm willing to believe that a lot of you watching also feel this way. This is now the third. The other reason is because Genshin has been a very prevalent game for the past chapter of my life. It is a part of my routine, and I sincerely hope that the following isn't true, but it looks like it's probably the game that I've clocked the most amount of hours into. Think about this for a moment. Imagine a game that you sank 3,000 to 4,000 hours into. There's no way that something like that isn't among your favorites, and no, I have no idea how something could manage to do that, but Genshin somehow manages. It creates something perfect and then proceeds to make the experience of playing it continuously borderline painful. It's an experience akin to eating your favorite dish, but you have those things in your mouth that hurt like a motherfucker whenever you touch them. This is the Genshin experience. And a perfectly valid response to this argument is, oh, but what about all the quality of life improvements? Don't worry, I'll get to those in just a moment. Here is why I still think Genshin shouldn't be forgiven, and I don't mean forgiven as in me dispensing judgment. I mean it in the sense that at this point in time, even if the game was to become perfect by the next patch, there has been too much neglect by HoYoTU for playing it. It's just that I hate the fact that this game doesn't respect its players. I got Fuwawa after the Simulanka event, and I've been meaning to use her on my Dendro team when I got Kokomi before she was cool. To farm a specific enemy, the resource Genshin gives you is the Adventurer's Handbook. You select an enemy type, then they'll be marked on your map. Not all of them, and not even the one nearest to you, just a random one in some part of the map. Then you're supposed to go kill them and proceed to the next one that was marked until you farmed each and every single one of them. Except this is bullshit, because after you farmed every single one of them, the handbook says that the enemies are respawning. Even those, literally the most common enemy in the game. Sure enough, eventually the handbook said that they were respawning, but all I had to do was walk 20 feet forward and you won't believe what I found. And of course, this is just one of the issues. We still have the character leveling problem, which to be honest is not as bad now since you can actually play the boss fights without having played through the story. I have 2 crowns on Arlecchino and I still haven't done her story quest. So from my understanding, you can get a character from anywhere outside of Inazuma or some other different map like the Chasm, and nothing stops you from just walking from Mondstadt all the way to, say, Natlan to farm for your recently acquired Surfshark VPN. But aside from that, it would be unfair to me to say that Genshin hasn't come a long way. The artifact loadout was something that I remember wanting since 1.2, and we finally got it after a lot of begging. The Abyss is somewhat more reasonable now if you have the more recent units, and if you don't, say goodbye to either 200 Primogems or 10 hours of your time. We do have Abyss 2 though, which is a very welcome addition, and let's not forget to mention the World Level 9, which doesn't prevent me from steamrolling through the entire overworld content, but I do appreciate the extra challenge as well as the extra rewards. And also you can choose your own artifacts now, though from what I gathered you can only do it a few times per version and you're still subjected to RNG calculating your crit stats. The issue with the gameplay being interrupted by a cutscene is one that still happened twice while I wasn't recording and once while I was. Though the focus experience mode does seem to help a little bit with that, I'm not entirely sure. Just kidding, I am entirely sure. I triggered Natlan's story quest and then walked to this little zone in Fontaine that always locks my camera whenever I walk by it. And oh me, oh my, another unskippable cutscene while the focus experience mode was on. Who would have thought? I would, because the truth is that the focus experience mode only solves half of the problem of being on the quest, the part where some random character you've never heard of is busy singing his ass on some random part of Teyvat. The other half, actually making it so that the game will eventually implement something like that. That way, the only time you'll be having issues with being interrupted is when you're doing what you do for 95% of the time you're playing, i.e. doing commissions, farming, or perhaps just exploring the world. We did just get a whole new nation to explore, and the truth is, so picture this, you've just come home from a very long day at either work or school and you have about half an hour to play Genshin before you have to do other things. So for the little time that you have, you're just gonna explore the new nation, get a few chests and a few waypoints. Lovely it must be when you come to this specific waypoint and say you accidentally talk to this guy because your controller has stick drift and your character accidentally turned to face him instead of getting the waypoint. Not that that happened to me, of course. On a completely separate note, to the Sony executive who designed the stick drift issue into the modern PlayStation, every other gacha game I've played has that. Fuck, even non-gachas have that. It's so weird to me because many parts of Genshin are designed to make sure that you can only play a little bit of it every day, but you have to come back every day. For almost 500,000 people over a year ago, and like it continues to do to this day. Hoyo wouldn't lift a finger to the countless pleas of the community for the first 2 or 3 years the game has been out, and the only explanation I have for that happening is because they could get away with it. I have been playing this game on and off since it was released. I remember when Ganyu was referred to by the community as Cryo Ember. I remember the mess that the first anniversary was. And only recently, only this year, have I started to see Hoyo implement some very basic quality of life changes to the game. Wuthering Waves really made Genshin lock in, except it didn't, because a lot of these changes happened before the release. And like, you're late enough, and especially if you're a new player, you'll get a lot of rewards, and there's a very good chance that you'll get a character from the upcoming banner. Maybe it's not the character you want, or even a practical one, but still. The experience of getting your first 5-star is something that you never forget, and now they're giving away a free 5-star unit every anniversary for free. Genshin could never. Yes, they fucking could. A lot more generosity than we have ever seen. It feels wrong to be this strict of a game that lets you enjoy to the fullest without demanding of you a single penny. They do ask for your money, don't get me wrong, but they never demand it, and it doesn't feel nearly as invasive as some other full-price games. I only hold Genshin to this standard because I genuinely love the world they created, and I know for a fact that Hoyo both knows and has what it takes to make this something truly remarkable. A decade-long project that could become a staple of gaming. I know it's funny to say this of Genshin of all things, but I'm not kidding. If you're watching this, you've played the game and you know the potential that Genshin has. And even though both you and I may have tarnished opinions of it, we wouldn't play it if we didn't have fun doing so. I myself will keep playing it because as much as this game pisses me off, it also contains some of my fondest memories. Those things are changing, but personally I don't think that Hoyo can No Man's Sky their way out of this one. And it's a shame.